Hello and welcome along to the VMTV Rugby Pod. It's a special day, a special debut for a certain man, Rob Kearney. Rob, is this your biggest debut of your career to date?
It's certainly up there, Stu. I've heard so much about this wonderful pod over the course of the last few years, and I'm delighted that you finally decided to invite me on. Someone must have let you down, did they?
Yeah, I'd say you're just waiting in the wings until Williams and Quinlan clear off, and then you'll be in full time.
Oh, Maddie.
Rob, firstly, I suppose we much touched straight away on Friday night. Just nothing seemed to click for Ireland. Let's put it bluntly.
No, nothing at all seemed to click for them. Listen, you go through. When I look back on my own career, you do go through these, times or not a period, but when you look back over the course of a season or a long few years, you're always able to single out and pinpoint these performances that just were complete outliers. And you don't know what went wrong. You don't know why it went wrong. You don't know why so many things went wrong, because on normal instances, you might not have your best game, but there's some things that you might look back and say, well, that was okay, and that was okay. And this just seemed like one of those nights for Ireland where, nothing they did was particularly good.
As fans now, and I suppose pundits, like the professional rugby is, and people watching are now literally going by game by game. You're only as good as your last performance and on to your next. And they've come into this one beating the world champions, and then such a lull on Friday night. Like, where are you with this? Is it just like, it's a one-off and they'll be back at it come Argentina? Or if Argentina isn't quite as good, is there a cause for concern?
Listen, it's hard. It's hard to know if it's a one-off, because we're going to have to wait and see what they do next week. I do think the reaction since the defeat has been escalated a little bit too much. I think everyone just needs to settle down now and
we're Irish, Rob. What do you expect?
Have a little bit of realism about the whole thing. Okay. This team has given us an unbelievable amount of days out. They've won 19 of their last games in the Aviva. We've just lost to the All Blacks. Okay, now we can delve deeper into the All Blacks. They weren't particularly good on the evening. This isn't the All Blacks of old that we know, but they're still the All Blacks and a pretty phenomenal team. So it remains to be seen if they will bounce back and if it is a one-off performance. But I do think there needs to be an element of calmness when we are analysing last weekend's game.
Look, I will be negative, Nelly, because they are facts as well. 13 penalties, 21 handling errors, 30 missed tackles. We haven't seen that from this Irish team in years. Have we, Rob?
No, we haven't. And listen, Stu, you're not being negative, Nelly, because, they're hard facts and, they're stats from the game that read appallingly. You're never going to be able to win a game with some of those stats. Our penalty count was as high as we've ever seen from this team. Our handling errors, something that this team prides themselves on is not just their skills, but their skills under pressure, their skills in multi-phase. We weren't able to build too many phases because, the play would break down after a few attempts of it. Set piece was poor. The line out has, it has been a small bone of contention over the last few years when Ireland do play poorly. And you look back through the game and a lot of times those games, the line out is poor too. But there's no getting away from our handling, our missed tackles, our discipline, our line out success, our breakdown success. Some of those key pillar components of a game were way off.
It's interesting, if a team loses a couple in a row and you speak to the players, they go, one win and the confidence is back. No one ever thinks the other way, like is one defeat and you lose a bit of confidence.
Players think about the other way. They do for sure. I can guarantee it that the video review today would have been uncomfortable. It would have been awkward. The mood would have been down this morning when normally this team would be, full of life, full of spirit on a Monday morning. So it's a different place that they have been than what they're normally used to. And that does take a little bit of its toll. You're not sleeping as well. Sometimes you can get a little bit edgier in training. Guys can get a little bit rattier with each other on the field. And just the whole atmosphere and environment can have a tendency to tense up. Now you've got different types of coaches, different types of players. Sometimes after those losses, a group can come together. They can galvanize themselves really well. Everyone can switch on mentally a little bit more and figure things out. And then there is some instances when after those big defeats and a bad performance like that, it can just fester on a little bit. And so, hopefully we see a big reaction from them now this weekend.
What is your opinion on the Irish 10 jersey? I'm going to quote this wrong, but a couple of years ago, Ronan O'Gara said the 0 to 5 caps is a bit of a blur. I think it's 5 to 20, maybe he mentioned. You're sort of finding your feet, and after 20 or 25, you start to get more used to the jersey. Jack Crowley, 16, 17 caps now? As a guy who played 90-odd times for Ireland, when did you feel comfortable? And where do you see that standoff position for Ireland?
Well, listen, I think, with the way Ronan put it there, from 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 20, I think that's very specific to different people and the type of team that you're in and your win-loss ratio over the course of those 20 caps. So it's very different for every player.
For you, what was your situation? Like, when did you start to feel, geez, I've really got it here? I know you'll say never, because every game you could be dropped, but you know what I'm trying to say.
I look back to the 2009 campaign. I'm not sure how many caps I had at the time, maybe 15, 20, and we got to the Grand Slam game in Cardiff. And I was a little bit of a passenger in the game. The whole occasion got to me. I seized up a little bit. I didn't want to make any mistakes. I played it really safe. And I always remember looking back on that game and thinking, if I ever get another big opportunity at the international stage, I'm going to express myself, play more. So it probably wasn't until, well into my 20s as caps that you start becoming fully comfortable and confident in the decision. But at the same time, Stu, you're only one bad performance away from being back rock bottom again. So, it's never a case of taking anything for granted. It's more just that, your performances become a little bit more stable and, it's harder to find mistakes and flaws in them.
And do you feel yourself, Jack Crowley's the man to lead Ireland?
I think that the position is still very much up for debate at the moment. I think, if you asked Jack this question a year ago when he was next in line to take over, after a full year, would he have probably have preferred and would he have liked to be in a position now where there was more of a gap between him and number 2 and number 3? I'd say he probably would. I think 6:57 minutes at the weekend, Kieran Crowley had a massive opportunity to come on and to try and turn the game around and put his stamp on it, but he didn't take it. And maybe he knew how big the opportunity was in his own head, and things got to him a little bit. But there's still that position is still very much up for debate, I think. And then you've got Sam Prendergast now coming through the ranks, who performed very well on that Emerging Ireland tour, seems to be impressing an awful lot in training, hasn't gotten a huge amount of Leinster game time under his belt, but that's Andy Farrell is not the type of coach who reads too much into how much you've played for your province.
You speak on Andy Farrell there. Everyone says he's so good at reading the week. You talked about it that time between the first and second test in South Africa. What do you think he will have done over, I suppose, Sunday and Monday today? Do you think he'll have been relaxed or a few harsh words in there?
Yeah, it's hard to know. I think one of the great things that I've always, learned from Andy Farrell in my time with him as a coach, and then, speaking to some of the guys who are still currently in the squad, he's very, very good at feeling out the environment and been able to judge and sense what the tone and what the mood of the players is. So, I think he would have got a feeling from them if the guys are all really low, if confidence is on the floor, if they're feeling rock bottom, maybe that's not the time as a head coach to start giving them the hard words and pointing everything out was wrong. Maybe that's the moment that you need the coach sort of to pick everyone else back up. On the other hand, if the players come in a little bit, we'll get it right next week, or, it wasn't as bad as we think, or it wasn't as bad as everyone else thinks, then you might go for the harsh words. I would imagine it's a combination of the both. He'll definitely try and pick them back up. He'll make them realize that what they produced was not them. It's not what they committed to do. It wasn't how they had prepared and trained the week before. But he will also point out some of those non-negotiable components of the game that they got wrong, that he would consider that, that's just a mental aspect and a lack of concentration on the evening.
Going into Friday, Argentina, they've taken some big scalps this year, beating South Africa, beating New Zealand, beating France. Yes, it wasn't France's top team, but they still had to go out there and do a job, which they've done. Are you not fearful of Argentina? Because I don't think anyone is, as in the players wouldn't be. They want to win every match, and rightly so. They're number one, will have dropped down to 2 or 3 in the world. But you expect Ireland to win. But how concerned are you of how good Argentina are?
Yes, I expect Ireland to win. I think Ireland will and should be fearful of the fact that if they don't play to their ability, this is an Argentinian team that can beat them in their own backyard. So you always have to have a little bit of, listen, I don't know if it's fear, if it's respect for the opposition, probably a little bit of both. But this, make no mistakes about it, this is as good an Argentina team as I think we've seen since 2015. Felipe has really seemed to turn them around. Their attack shape is really good, and their forwards, okay, they might not be the biggest, but they're dynamic and they're powerful. And it's certainly a team who could cause us some problems at the weekend if we're not bang on it again.
Felipe obviously coached in Leinster for a good few years. He'll have a few tricks up his sleeve, won't he? He'll know Irish rugby pretty well. Yeah,
he will. He will. And sometimes, if you know systems inside out and you know exactly their types of defend and the way they play, you can have a few little trick plays up your sleeve to try and exploit them. Let's be very fair to Ireland that their defence is rock solid, and they're one of the hardest teams, if not the hardest team in world rugby to get tries off. So it's not as if we have too many chinks in our armor from a defensive point of view. I think the problem at the weekend was we just gave way too many kickable penalties away and way too many sloppy penalties away.
It depends who's fresh and fit and available, but do you think he'll give most of the 23 another crack?
Yeah, it's hard to know, isn't it?
What would you like to see change? What would you like to see change?
I don't envisage too many changes. I really don't. There's an argument for Robbie Henshaw to come back in. I think Jack starts again at number 10.
Henshaw for who?
Probably for Bundy. I think Bundy had one of his poor games in a while, and he wasn't alone. Okay, there was lots of lads who had really poor games, but sometimes if you're playing in a position where the next man waiting in the wings is also a world-class player, your margin for error in the night is an awful lot smaller. So by saying take Bundy out and put Robbie in, I'm not saying Bundy was the worst player on the field, because he wasn't. But it's just the next guy in has so much quality and so much offer. And you probably need to maybe make one or two changes just to freshen things up and bring a bit of life to it.
Well, it's going to be an exciting couple of weeks. Rob, great to have you online for the first time. I hope you thoroughly enjoyed it. You look as if you did.
I had the time of my life, Stu. You're very good for having me on.
Chat to you soon.
Cheers, buddy.